All right, hi, I'm Larry Bell with Bell's Brewery, and I'm sitting here today with Jim Koerber. And Jim and I met at the Patrick Henry chapter meeting, Beer Can Collectors of America, back in May, and we got talking at the bar, and Jim noted this old keg I had and said, well, this is from my family brewery, and what are you talking about? And wanted to take today to sit with you, Jim, and just explore some of the history of your family in brewing and you yourself in brewing, because I think you're a tie to the past that we don't have so much. So what year were you born in?
1922.
1922, in the middle of Prohibition.
Yes, very much so.
And do you remember, as a young person, do you remember Prohibition ending?
Yes, I do, somewhat.
It's a big day in the family. Family brewers we'll talk about, right?
Yes. A little bit of the history of the family. I'll probably get into that part of it, Larry,
All right.
in a little bit. Do you want me to go start with the family a little bit here now?
Sure, because you've got family that's been in brewing for a long time.
Quite a while.
Yeah.
Quite a while. Not as long as most brewing families were, and I'll explain that to you. But basically, this is my grandfather, John Koerber.
We'll take pictures of this.
And the reason I got him here is because John Koerber was a saloon keeper in Akron, Ohio, and he ended up having the restaurant right downtown in Akron, which was a bar and saloon and everything. So, but anyway, he was very active as a saloon keeper. So I brought an article here that was in the paper there. And the reason I did that is because it's signed by John Koerber, and he was the president of the Ohio Liquor League at that time. So he was the guy who was in charge of all of the liquor league people there. So in those days, saloon keepers decided that they wanted to build their own brewery. So the saloon keepers in Akron, Ohio, went ahead and they built their own brewery. My granddad here happened to end up as the president of the Akron Brewing Company. And there's a picture of the Akron Brewing Company. Incidentally, Larry, that building is still there. It's not a brewery any longer.
What do they do there now?
It's a storage. They used it as a storage place, yeah.
Uh-huh.
But that beautiful building is still there. So anyway, that's how my granddad got into the beer business.
And what did they call the brewery when it was built?
That was the Akron Brewing Company.
Akron Brewing Company, and it was owned by the different...
saloon keepers.
They all joined
a number
together
of saloon keepers got together, and they built this brewery. And that was happening quite a bit throughout the country here.
What did they call the beer then? Do you know?
Was it White Rock? I think it was White Rock, I believe.
White Rock?
Yeah.
Uh-huh. And it was they probably made a Pilsner and a...
That's basically what it would have been, yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yes. So, then my granddad, the Board of Trade in Ionia, Michigan, had an old brewery that burnt down. And because of my granddad being the president of this brewery, and he had been connected with some other breweries that saloon keepers had built in other areas, the Board of Trade in Ionia, Michigan convinced him to come up to Ionia and build and rebuild the brewery that had burnt down there.
How do you think, do you have any conjecture on how Ionia, Michigan gets hooked up with a guy in Akron, Ohio?
That's how he got up to Michigan, see? Is that the Board of Trade got him to come up to Michigan here and rebuild the brewery that had burnt down in Ionia. Now, I'm almost positive that because saloon keepers were building their own breweries in those days, I think his whole intent was to come up to Ionia, build the brewery, and then move back to Akron, because he never sold the Bank Cafe that he owned there, and he never sold his house there. So anyway, he did come up here, and he built, I'll show you a picture there of the brewery. And actually, what he built there was just the one tall building. And he went there in 1906. He got this brewery going in the fall of 1907. And unfortunately, in the spring of 1909, Ionia voted dry.
Devastating.
Devastated. It absolutely devastated him. So he died of Bright's disease 2 years later, but I'm sure it was the worry of laying in bed at night, coming up there and spending all this money building this brewery and having it go bankrupt and have to go out of business in less than a year and a half. So anyway, what happened then is my dad and his brothers moved all of the equipment out of this brewery here down to Detroit, now because you're talking about Prohibition time, down to Detroit, and they set up a brewery there that was known as the Michigan Brewing Company. And they got that going in 1913, spring of 1913, they got that brewery going. And there again, Detroit then went dry in 1919, just 2 years before the state of Michigan went dry, and then the whole country, of course.
Yeah.
But this brewery happened to be in a area of Kelsey Wheel Company, made wheels for automobile companies. And the automobile business was growing to beat the band at that time. And so the brewery actually ended up right inside the Kelsey Wheel Company's property. And they had to get there, you had to go through the Kelsey Wheel Company entrance area. And so they went ahead and did make regular beer according to the history of the family. They did go ahead and make regular beer there for quite some time, until finally, according to the history of the family, they had a truck by the Purple Gang hijacked a truck, and so they figured that they were not that part of the brewing business, so they closed the plant and sold it to Kelsey Hayes. So when Prohibition was repealed, then my dad went
So
back.
when Prohibition's repealed, you're 11 years old.
I'm 11 years old.
11 years old.
I'm 11 years old.
So, and like I say, is this something you remember? This
Oh, yes.
is probably something big news in the family.
Oh, big news, yeah, very much so. So when Prohibition was repealed, my dad decided to go back to Ionia and refurbish this building, and also build the bottling house and office building there. And his intent, because there were a lot of other breweries opening up, what do I have it here? Oh, incident, there's a picture of my dad also, Clarence Koerber, they called him Click. But let me look here. I don't see it. But anyway, he went back up there, and because there were many, many other breweries opening up all over the country, he decided that in the Michigan area, he would make the only true ale made in this part of the country, which they decided to call Friar's Ale. And that's some bottles of it.
Porter, Friar's Porter.
And we made a porter. Incidentally, and when we made this porter here, my dad actually thought that porter drink was so healthy that any drugstore should have been able to sell that, whether they had a liquor license to sell it. He honestly felt.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah, well, they really felt that beer was a healthy drink. One other thing that we did do is he made Click's malt liquor, and Click's malt liquor was the first product that was ever bottled or sold as a malt liquor. That was the first one right there. So anyway, he decided to make ale, and which turned out to be a very successful thing to do there. At the same time, I wanted to mention too. My grandfather was president of the Ohio Liquor League there. My dad was president of the Michigan Brewers Association. He was also very active in the United States Brewers Association. And I'll show you, I'd go to my uncles also, and my Uncle Charlie was president of the Ohio Brewers Association. So like their father, they were all active in the businesses that they were working in. One other thing I will show you is my dad, besides the malt liquor bit, he also invented what was probably the first six-pack right there.
Oh, look at that. Yeah, with the
Now-
handy carrying
Now-
the handle there. And
Now, the reason that he did that, is that whenever anybody bought 6 bottles of beer someplace, at a store, they just put them in a paper bag, and by the time the people got home, the paper bag was practically falling apart because the cold bottles would destroy the paper. So his intent here was to take that case there and hand them out, give them to stores in place so they could use that rather than a paper bag. And then the only problem is that in Michigan, you could not give anything away in Michigan. I don't know whether it's the same as it was then or not.
well, I think there's still a law that says you can't give away a bottle opener with a case of beer.
They say, yeah, and that was, but so consequently, that kind of fell apart because he couldn't give it away, couldn't give it to distributors to give to stores. So,
Just out of curiosity, do you still have any of those boxes, those 6-pack boxes? None of them around, huh?
no.
Really? That's too bad.
Larry, when our brewery closed, and we walked away, I think of all the stuff I should have taken out of that brewery, but we never did it, so.
So now then, you have more there that you want to do now, or? Well, you as a young man in the family, you're growing up in this family that's brewing. So there's the brewery in Ionia and there's the brewery in Akron, still, right?
Well, all right, but my granddad has sold his shares in the Akron Brewing Company to go up to Ionia and build that brewery.
Okay.
But after Prohibition was repealed, my dad went back to Ionia to rebuild that brewery. My uncles, Uncle Charlie and Uncle Bill and Uncle Art, bought the home brewery in Toledo, Ohio, and that would be the home brewery in Toledo, Ohio, and they renamed that the Koerber Brewing Company.
So they bought it as Prohibition is repealed. They bought it and opened it.
Bought it and reopened it as the Koerber Brewing Company then, and made Koerber's beer in Toledo, Ohio.
Now, Jim, do you have any idea when the family is reopening these breweries, where are they getting equipment from? Where are they buying brew kettles from?
There were places that made brew kettles. Oh, sure.
What's that?
Oh, yeah.
They're coming from Germany?
I'm positive there was.
But are they coming from Germany, or was it? You don't know.
I'm not sure because, as you said, I was 11 years old.
Yeah,
but but of course here, the home brewing home brewery, would have had.
They already had.
It was a complete brewery.
Yeah.
And like my dad, when he went back to Ionia, that was he did have to refurbish all of that, but there were outfits that did that. And I did mention about my dad being a president of the Michigan Brewers Association, and here was a silver plaque that I had that my Uncle Charlie was president of the Ohio Brewers Association, and I'm kind of proud that they were all very active in their business. Then, if you had gone to the Olympic in Detroit, what you would have seen were the hockey team played there. The sign you would see there would be that sign on the wall.
Huh.
And what it says here says Koerber's Beer. Do you see the friar there?
Yeah.
It would have said Koerber's Beer and Friar's Ale, sold here by the bottle and by the glass.
Nice.
And you would have seen that sign.
To improve your game, it says. To improve your game. Yeah, a couple glasses of Koerber's. Yeah, at least when you get checked, maybe it won't hurt so much, right?
But I also want to tell you that at the same time, if you went to the Tigers stadium, you would have found this same sign there, because they did have the contract to sell their product at those two operations at that time.
That's pretty good considering the size of Stroh's and Goebel's.
They were very active in sports, and so consequently they knew the people there. That was the reason for it. Now that kind of covers the family as how.
Well, so now you're a young man growing up in a brewing family in the region, and was it expected of you and the family that you would just go into brewing, or?
Oh, I think probably so. I don't think there's any doubt about that.
Do you have siblings? You have brothers, or?
I had a brother. I had one brother,
Uh-huh.
and unfortunately, my brother. Here I am, almost 94 years old. I had one brother, and he died at 60 years old. So, on his 60th birthday, really.
But did he go into brewing? Was he involved?
No. Well, he was when we had our breweries. He was a sales manager for the Friar's Ale Brewing Company.
And so you got the family brewery, and it's kind of okay, young man, you're gonna follow along, and then. So did you, I know you've got your Siebel Institute hat on here.
Yes.
So did you attend college and then Siebel, or out of high school it was Siebel, or how did that go?
I had 2 years of college in, and then of course, Larry, World War II came on.
And college was where?
I went to college at Assumption College in Ontario, in Windsor, Ontario.
Good Catholic school?
A little Catholic college over there.
Jesuit, or?
Huh?
Jesuit?
No, it wasn't Jesuit. It's I can't think of it was not Jesuit, but it was priest like Jesuit.
Yeah. Okay.
Very much so.
All right. World War II comes along.
Then World War II comes along, and both I have to go into the service, and incidentally, what I did in the service, I became a fighter pilot, and I flew fighter missions with the 8th Air Force in Europe.
Wow.
So, unfortunately, I survived that part of it. So when I came back, I did have my 2 years college already in, and I was able to get into Siebel Institute to get my brewmaster's degree. So that's a picture of me with my diploma there.
Nice.
Yeah.
And how long was that course for you at Siebel?
That was 1 full year. And it was 8 hours a day you went there, because that's the type of teaching it was. Incidentally, Larry, one of the things you had to learn when you were, let me show you here. one of the things that you learned in the brewing school when I went there was boilers. You had to know the different. There's water tube boilers, there's fire tube boilers, and there's Scotch marine boilers, and then you had to know all about the steam from boilers because in those days breweries most of their power came from their own power plant, and that's whenever you see a brewery and whenever you see a picture of a brewery, it's a painted picture. They'll always have smoke coming there because that means the brewery's busy. It's operating. See?
Right, the power plant, yeah.
Power
Usually
plant.
you look at the old practical brewer, they talk about power plant operations, and always best to have two boilers, right?
Yeah.
In case one's down.
Yeah, absolutely,
Little
very much.
redundancy.
So. Yeah, and see that's what's changed at your brewery here. On top of that, breweries were always tall because they used the gravity of the grain always went to the top, and then everything came down to where it finally got brewed, and then they pumped it all back up to the
cool ship.
Yeah,
Right.
And so that's one of the things. But the power plant really ran everything. The steam that you used in the kettle to boil the brew was a double bottom boiler kettle there, and the steam is what you would use to boil the wort.
So do you remember any of your professors at Siebel? Do you remember anybody?
I do to a certain degree, yes. Yeah.
Nobody that stands out that you
Yeah.
you remember? Or anything?
I do remember Dean Schreck. Dean Schreck always wanted me to tell my dad to get him some Friar's Ale because he liked his Friar's Ale. So I do remember that part of it. Yeah.
And did you live with other students then, or?
You lived. The school set you up in people's houses that had rooms that you could live in, and so that's basically what you did for that year. Is you just lived in somebody else's
And do you
house.
remember where that was?
Oh, pretty much so. Yeah.
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 Where was it?
It was in Chicago, and it was one of the neighborhoods in the northern part of Chicago there.
Close to the school.
Oh
up
yeah,
there.
no, you could take the streetcar down to the school.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
All right.
So that's basically what that was.
So you complete your schooling at Siebel, and you come back, and what do you start out doing at the brewery? What's your first job?
I was assistant brewmaster. We had our brewery had gotten too small in Ionia, so and we could not produce enough product there. So we bought the current brewery in Port Huron, Michigan, and renamed that the Friar's Ale Brewing Company. And that's when I came home. That's what we had.
It was the old Sea Kern Brewery, and they made they make cream of Michigan and different things, I think.
Yeah, I think that's probably it.
Yeah.
Yes. So I was assistant brewmaster, and then the brewmaster John Long got a job with Rickle Malt Company in Detroit, and so then I took over as brewmaster of the Friar's Ale Brewing Company. One interesting thing, and the reason that we had to get a bigger brewery, is that I'm trying to show you that my dad was quite inventive with the six-pack and different things, and he set up the first black-owned beer distributing company in Detroit, which was known as the Paradise Valley Distributing Company. And I've got that one, when I showed you all those bottles there, Paradise Valley Brewing Company got, I can't see it there. Yeah. Anyway, got the brown bottle, and that was a pretty heavy drink. It was probably 6.5% or 7% by volume. So anyway, we outsold every other brewery put together in Paradise Valley in those days.
Huh.
And they called it the Brown Bomber. That was that.
So what kind of volume were you doing? So there's the Ionia Brewery is
The Ionia
working.
Brewery could do about 45,000 barrels, and the current brewery could do about 125,000.
Okay.
We ran both of them for a while, and then we closed the one in Ionia right after the war, really.
And so you had copper kettles, copper brew house.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
And what were fermentation vessels like? Were they wood?
Some were the ones we had in Ionia were fortunately, when we moved back, my dad moved back to Ionia, and as I mentioned earlier, he and his brothers had moved all of the equipment out of there. So when he reopened the brewery there, they were all glass-lined
Glass-lined tanks.
kegs and glass-lined fermenting tanks and glass-lined tanks, so it was really a very, very modern brewery when we moved back there, very much so. Mm-hmm. So anyway, the other thing I kind of wanted to mention was it's the United States Brewers Association, but the Michigan chapter of the United States Brewers Association, where the brewmasters were very friendly people with each other, and very much so. And so we had the Detroit chapter of the United States, which was the Michigan Brewers chapter of the United States Brewers Association. So this is a picture of a winter party of the
USBA Michigan chapter, not Master Brewers.
No, this is the Master Brewers.
This is Master
I'm
Brewers.
sorry.
Everybody's friendly
Oh,
in
yeah.
this group.
This is the Master Brewers
Yeah.
Association. This is the Detroit chapter of the Master Brewers Association. It mentions right down here. This is the winter party. And as you can see, all the men are in tuxedos. All the women were in gowns. And
That's great.
huh?
That's great.
Isn't it though?
The Hotel Fort Shelby, Detroit,
Yeah.
February 22nd, 1947.
Yeah.
And are you in this picture?
Am I here? That's me right there. My dear wife next to me. That's my brother there. And my
very
dad
dapper.
and his family are here.
Uh-huh. Very nice. Very nice.
So anyway, that was the summer, that was the winter thing. Then in the summertime, we always had a doings at a golf course. And it was kind of a dress outfit then too. The men played golf, and then we had a nice party after the golf. And these are, you look through those, Larry, and those are just pictures of some of the people that were at the golf occasions.
The headline here is Record Throng Enjoys Gay Detroit District Outing. That might go over a little different today, but the Detroit summer season, the District Detroit Master Brewers Association, Hillcrest Country Club in Mount Clemens, over 200 persons were out there, hailed by District President Herman K. Rosenbusch.
Yes.
Wow. Yeah, and here's men in suits. And
Oh, I'm right there. Oh, right there. That's me and my wife.
very nice. Is she still with us?
No, she's been gone 14 years.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So anyway, I just wanted to show that it was a bunch that just enjoyed each other, and I guess the battle between breweries wasn't with the brewing end of it.
It was the owners, yeah.
Yeah, it was that
right.
part. The brewing end, they all got along real good together, and they enjoyed seeing each other, and they enjoyed having parties like that and what have you. This is just another picture that this was at Rico Malt Company, where they had pretty near all of the Detroit brewing people there.
And were you buying malt from Rickle?
Huh?
Is that where you got your malt for the brewery? Was
No,
from
we
Rickle?
didn't. For some reason or other, we got our malt from well, it was not Freighter, but another malting company in Wisconsin.
Laddish, maybe,
Yeah,
or
yeah. But the interesting thing about malting is that the grain would be grown out west, and when it would come by railroad then to the malting place, and as long as it kept coming eastward, the rate stayed the same or something. I forget just how that all worked with the railroad, but it was just like it never stopped. It was just the rate just continued as long as if you went the other way, it changed entirely. So I don't know what that was all about with the railroad company.
and so now in Port Huron, then, what year did the brewery close?
That closed in 1950.
1950.
Yeah.
And what do you think led to the closure of the brewery?
Not enough sales.
Yeah.
It was daily, basically.
Do you have recollections of like the marketplace at that time? So it's after the war, and what's it like for the brewery to have to compete against these now newer, bigger national brands?
That was the big problem, and there were a couple of things along that same line. Now, I happened to be at a they were known as premium beers. The national breweries, Anheuser-Busch and Schlitz and the whole bunch, they were known as premium breweries. So
And you were local.
Huh?
You were local.
Well, then there were local beers. See?
Yeah.
So I happened to be at a Master Brewers convention in Boston one year, and the question came up: what is the definition of a what was the brewery? The premium. What is the definition of a premium brewery? And of course, the answer was a premium brewery is a premium beer is a beer that they get a premium price for. So, and that was the answer. So, but they did get probably 50% more per case than the local people. That was one thing against us. I also think that after World War II, travel in the country changed a lot, considerably. Airplanes came along. There was air travel all over. During the war, people traveled all over the country, and it got to the point where they wanted the same beer no matter where they went, pretty much. So if they went to California, they wanted to have that beer there. So that's how premium beers kind of took over the whole thing. Detroit actually at that time had 10 breweries there, and they were pretty good sized breweries. Stroh's was up into the million barrel brewery, and Pfeiffer's was in that area, and so was Goebel's, and so there were some very good sized breweries in Detroit, and they just couldn't compete with the premium beers. So that's pretty much what happened. But I think it was a lot of the people being able to travel the country and when wanting the product that they wanted, no matter where they went. I think that had a lot to do with it.
Now, so you're in the European theater station flying missions. Did you get American beer? They bring American beer over to the base? No?
No. Oh, but I will tell you an interesting thing along that line is that my cousin Charles Koerber, he had been a graduate from Siebel Institute of Technology when he went into the service, and when Charles Koerber was in Italy during the war, the government had took him and another fellow who had been a brewing chemist for Anheuser-Busch, and they had him take an old burn-up brewery in Toledo, in Italy, to restore and make beer for the troops there.
Nice.
And I have articles about Charles doing that and pictures of him over there running this brewery over in Italy.
Well, they say, at the end of the war, the they say the bomber pilots, when we were bombing the Philippines, whether it was true or not, the story always was, whatever you do in Manila, don't hit the brewery. General MacArthur owns stock, and we don't want to, get the general mad. But I think the other part was, hey, we're gonna go into Manila, and we're gonna need some beer, so don't hit the brewery, right?
Well,
So-
I was stationed in England in the 8th Air Force, and so consequently, the English had a lot of nice ales and beers and what have you. So
you weren't without.
yeah, really, yeah.
Uh-huh. And so the brewery in Port Huron closes in 1950, and then what happens for you next?
Yeah, well, basically, then of course the Koerber Brewery in Toledo also closed about the same time.
They closed about the same time as well.
So we were basically pretty much out of the beer business then.
Okay.
I had to go into to sales and ended up as a home improvement salesman for Sears Roebuck, where I finally ended up in the sales. I've been in sales and insurance and real estate, and got through life okay.
And is the brewery building still there in Port Huron?
No, that brewery burnt down.
That burnt.
The Koerber Brewing Company, which had, as I said, was a home brewery in Akron and in Toledo, Koerber, that brewery actually they had leased it out to a chemical company of some kind, and that company actually blew that brewery almost completely down, the whole buildings and everything, and actually killed 9 people in that process.
Wow.
That's what happened to that building. As I said, though, the Akron Brewing Company is still there, and it is such a beautiful building as it is. The brewery in Ionia, the brewery end was torn down, but the bottling house and office was converted into a bowling alley, and that's still there as a bowling alley.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Okay. So the equipment then was sold off, probably just auctioned off and went to other breweries, I assume.
I guess probably that's what happened to it.
And what about recipes? I mean, there were old recipe books, family recipe books for beer. Did those go with the breweries, or no?
Well,
they didn't.
There
get
again,
grabbed?
Larry, I think so often of this stuff that I should have brought out of one of those breweries when it closed. See? But it's pretty much all in the head here, and that 984, it's kind of gone out of that one too. So I do know that, say, our regular Friar's Ale would have a balling of out of the kettle of about 12 and a half, and then we would ferment that down to about balling of 2, which would give us about a 4.2 alcohol by weight.
Yeah.
In that area. So, and that was that one. When we went to the Brown Label one for the Paradise Valley people, we went up to raise the balling up there, and we probably got that up to about 5.5. And
Were you using sugar, like on the
no,
malt liquor?
we used malt about 20%. And we did not have a cooker, so consequently we used cornflakes, and the cornflakes were not, of course,
Pre-gelatinized.
yeah, they were just they were almost like snow, see.
Yeah.
And so we about 20% of our product would have been to more or less lighten the product a bit. Would have been it would have been 80% malt and 20% cornflakes. So.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And you recall your hops? Where would hops come
Our hops always came from Oregon for some reason or other. I don't know why we chose that, but that's basically where all of our hops came from.
Buying domestic hops.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And now, so you're in the war effort, but do you recall, or through the family, the brewery having difficulty getting ingredients or bottles or crowns, any of that during the war? You know, I know like the Brewers Association of America was founded in 1941 because small brewers were having trouble getting crowns and
Yes,
and
very
bottles.
much so. As a matter of fact, my understanding was that you had to more or less get your own medal somehow or other, and get it to the crown company, and then they would make crowns for you. But you were trying to dig up metal there. Cases were the same way. You had to you used to have beautiful, nice, decorated wood beer cases, and you couldn't get those anymore. You just find cases any place you could and paint them yourself. And I understand there were, as a matter of fact, one thing that did happen there, Larry, is that when my dad went back to Ionia and decided to make ale, because ale is about 20% more product to make than the beer, he decided to use an 11-ounce bottle, and I'm sure I have a picture of that, or of those 11-ounce bottles, and with the 11-ounce bottle, it did give him another case and a half of ale from a barrel of beer, which really was free. You know, that really didn't cost him, and that would cover some of the additional expense of having an ale brewery over a beer brewery.
So when you're making ales, you've got the glass-lined tanks, but for the primary fermentation, was that happening in open vessels?
That was open vessel, yes.
In wood? Open wood?
No, ours were the glass-lined open vessel.
Glass-lined open vessels?
Yeah, in fact, they were pretty much a square. As I said, when we moved back to Ionia, we had to refit the whole brewery, and so with the glass tanks and the cellars, that we also had glass-lined open top fermenting tanks.
And do you recall how big was a batch size?
A tank there?
Yeah.
Well, our brew kettle would brew 100 barrels.
100 barrels.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And of course, then that's basically what the size of the fermented tank up there would be also.
And when you were putting up keg beer, what were the kegs? What were the kegs made of?
Some of them were wood, but most of them were steel. This size would be wood. This is an 1/8 barrel. A quarter barrel would be a wood one like this. We did have some wood kegs, but they were cooler kegs where they would have a pipe through them, and they could run cold water through to keep them cool. But other than that, most of the kegs were steel kegs.
Okay.
And there, of course, you had to reline those with tar. Really, is what you had to line them with to protect the product from the steel itself. Mm-hmm.
So after the breweries closed and you ran out of all of your inventory of the family beer, what was your beer then? You know, you're still a pretty young man. You're a beer drinker. What'd you switch to drink?
Because I was so friendly with the Stroh's family, I still drink Stroh's beer. So,
okay.
Yeah. And,
okay.
Because that's pretty much my beer.
All right. All right.
I do also will drink Molson's Ice. Mm-hmm. Now, the reason that people don't understand ice beer. See, ice beer. In your brewing process, when you boil a beer, you coagulate
Trube.
Yeah, and that's called a warm break.
Yeah. And
then when you cool a beer, you also coagulate
get the cold break.
undesirable
Yeah.
And so consequently, if you ever seen a frozen bottle of beer, you'll see that it's clouded. Well, that's a second cooling break is what that is. So it's getting out a little bit more of the undesirable protein that's in the beer. So I think ice beer probably ends up a little bit on the sweeter side, or not on the bitter side, because you have taken out that little bit more of undesirable protein there.
And so what do you think? How does it make you feel when you see this, for 30 some years now, all these new breweries open and I don't know how many, you said there was 10 breweries back in Detroit back in the day. I'm sure there's at least 10 breweries today and over 250 in Michigan, and it's all come back. How does that make you feel?
The fortunate thing that happened, Larry, and you probably know this more than I do, see, is that I mentioned back in those days, you had a premium beer and you had a local beer. And of course, the premium beer sold for more than the local beer sold for. Well, fortunately, in your case here and in other breweries today, that whole thing has flip-flopped. Now, you are the one that gets the premium price here, and the big breweries don't, they get the lower price here. So that whole thing has completely flip-flopped, and that's why we have breweries like yourself coming along, because you now can compete in the beer processing, but which was a fortunate thing that happened.
Well, yeah, I think it is. I like that. So, let's see, what haven't I asked?
When was the first beer that you drank? At what age?
What, Jim? How old were you when you had your first beer?
When I drank my first beer,
Yeah.
I was 11 years old, I think. See,
So for the end of Prohibition, you got a beer?
I got to tell you something along that line. When my dad opened that brewery in Ionia, and I was actually 11 years old when we moved back up there. I loved that place. I just loved that brewery. I would go there and go all the way up to that top thing where the malt would go up and I'd go down into the cellars. And in those days, the workers in a brewery could drink beer on the job. There was nothing against that. It was perfectly okay. And the fellows in this cellar, the big tank has a little bitty valve on it there. And the workers in this cellar every now and then would get a glass and go over there, get a little bit of ale in the glass and have a couple of sips of it. And if I was down there when I was 13, 14 years old, I would always get my little glass just like that right with them. And so, I don't know, I think, Larry, when I was in the service in the war, I happened to end up in Paris one time overnight, and I went to a family had asked to have somebody come over and have dinner with them, and it was a French family, so I did. And there were young children in this family, and they always have wine for dinner, and the children have wine for dinner also. There was nothing wrong with it. I really think when you try to put it off to 21 years old or something, then young people want to cheat on it or something or other like that. But if you're brought up and you lived along that line, it just becomes natural to you to have. Right now, I have two drinks of beer every night before dinner. That's my drinking of beer right there. So, but as I say, even at home, it was nothing wrong with me to go to the icebox and get a bottle of ale out of there. And when I was in my early teens, even there was nothing wrong with that.
So you have 2 glasses of beer, and does your girlfriend have 2 glasses of beer with you? Or, huh?
You know, my dear wife wasn't much of a drinker.
Well, she's passed. We got girlfriend or just playing the field these days? I'll talk to the boys later. They'll tell me what's up.
Two possibilities. He likes to go on and hugs from all the old ladies, so he definitely does that.
What'd you have?
You're hugging all the ladies, the old ladies. You're a hugger. Yeah.
Why the friar? Why the friar?
Why the friar?
Yeah.
All right, that's kind of an interesting thing too. So when they decided to go back to Ionia and rebuild that brewery and then make an ale, I think he originally wanted to name it Old English Ale, but then there was a brewery down east that already had Old English Ale. So they wanted to have, they thought probably an English name of some kind. Well, my Aunt Marie, who lived in Akron, had married a fellow by the name of Ernie Farr. And they thought, well, Farr is a English name, and maybe that would be it. And maybe so they were thinking of Farr's Ale. Well, Farr's Ale evolved into Friar's Ale, and that's how it came about with Friar's Ale. And now, then, his advertising was mostly a picture of a friar, and there might be just a little thing up here in the corner. And his thinking was that when everybody saw a picture of a friar, they would think it would be Friar's Ale. So.
The friar that was used, that was really a stock art piece, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't an original art for the brewery, but a lot of breweries used stock art. They had those 3 horse heads, different breweries in different regions would use the art because they didn't compete against each other.
Yeah.
So, yeah, they picked that up and had the Friar's Ale. And so, out of curiosity, does the family, you probably have a good collection of old bottles and,
I have
and
that, yes.
packaging.
It's a bulk of it.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, when I think of all the stuff nowadays, when I go to these beer memorabilia things, and I think of all the stuff I should have taken out of that brewery at that time, but it's all gone now. So.
Yeah.
And what is also interesting to me, Larry, is the people who save beer memorabilia. They were not in the beer business whatsoever. They were not brewers or anything. They just got interested. But I guess it first started off, they start saving cans, and then the next thing you know, they found out that there was really some very interesting beer advertisement and what have you, and signs and what have you. So some of them get into that with
Some of it's pretty expensive.
a hell of a lot of
days.
money, I'm going to say.
Yeah.
I've got some friends that I think probably are well into the hundreds of thousands of dollars that they have in beer memorabilia. So,
Absolutely.
yeah, who were never in the beer business or anything else.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but isn't it wonderful that there are people that are saving this kind of stuff? And another interesting thing along that line is I have some very close friends, and Dave Long, is one of my very good friends also. But I have others, and if they see anything they think I want, I would like to have, they'll buy it for me. And they know what the price should be on it for one thing.
Yeah.
And
So do you collect other things, other Breweryana then?
I don't know.
No. But
If
just
they
like
see
family stuff.
If they see something like this,
Uh-huh.
if they see something like this that they think I might want, they'll buy it, and then I get it for whatever they bought it for.
Yeah.
But they are just a really nice bunch of people. That's why we keep going to those things, and to just more or less to see them also and chat with them.
When you think back there into the late 40s, and you think about your competitors, so you're, whether in Ionia or Port Huron or Toledo, for that matter, there's a lot of breweries out there, and you know, obviously you showed Master Brewers, but day to day, what was the feeling like with the local breweries? So you're in Ionia. There's breweries in Grand Rapids, right close by.
Practically every city.
Yeah.
Flint had a brewery. Ann Arbor had a bunch. Ypsilanti had a brewery. There was probably at least 25, 30 breweries in Michigan alone, other than what was in Detroit. There are 10 breweries.
And would you go over and visit those breweries? Would you go say hi?
Not very much. I would some of them in Detroit because we would have our
meetings
Master
there.
Brewers meetings in Detroit there. And I would see some of those breweries, yeah.
Okay.
But I'm just saying, it was really a very interesting business, and my family did well in it for quite a long time, and they were successful in their trade. So that's about it, I guess.
Well, thanks so much for spending this time with us and
All right.
and telling us your story.
No,
We really
I will.
appreciate it.
I'm going to show you one more thing then. Oh! Here's the picture I was trying to find.
Oh.
See, it's on the floor here. That's the 11-ounce bottle that I was telling you about. Now there were a couple of problems with that one, Larry, and that Pepsi Cola used a bottle just like this one right here, like those bottles, only it was a 12-ounce bottle. And so we would get back a lot of 12-ounce bottles, even though ours was
11.
ours was an 11-ounce bottle, yeah. So you had to sort out the darn other bottles that you would get back. And of course, bottles were 2 cents, and then a beer case was whatever, and it all came out to 60 cents is what a case, and bottles would be the deposit on them. So
And washing those bottles out, storing all those dirty
then
bottles.
Then we have to wash all those bottles.
What a pain in the arse.
Very much so, very much so. And then and you had to have a big glass like this. That the bottles would have to go by, and you have somebody washing them, because you never know what people put in bottles.
Terrible things.
And so you had to be sure that you, and whoever was sitting here looking at those bottles going by there, 10 minutes would have been the limit, and then somebody else has to sit down there. But yeah, you had to check every single one of those bottles. So.
So I'd be interested in hearing two things before we break. The first is how you two met at the Brewery Festival. It could be a fun story just to hear, because you met at the cafe, correct?
Right. It was. I don't know if you were sitting with your Siebel hat on.
Yeah.
I said,
Yeah, also.
Well, you got to look at the back of the hat too.
we teach the world to brew. But yeah, I don't know. We struck up a conversation.
He had a business card he gave to the bar tonight.
Oh yeah, because I think he saw this. Yeah. Which I don't remember where I got this. I had this for a while, but you know, if I see cool Michigan stuff like this, I'm going to grab it.
Yeah, I think it was either Dave Lott or one of those guys were asking me, did you ask him what he wants for it? What he wants for it? And I don't want to buy it from you because I want something like this to be out there where other people see it.
Right, to be
You know,
on display, and we look at the history of brewing in Michigan.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I do have kegs at home with a wooden keg with that. I have one, so.
Yeah, well, this had to be a specialty in the brewery, cleaning these and taking care of
Yes.
these. Was there a cooper shop in the brewery? Was there a cooper who took care of the wooden kegs?
No,
No? If they got
No, we-
in disrepair, you send them out?
No, we did. We pretty much took care of these ourselves, really. They're sturdy. There's not a heck of a lot that can go wrong with that keg right there.
Yeah, okay.
Very little. We had a keg washer that you would, and then it would rotate the keg so it would wash it the inside and then rinse it out, and then reuse it again. So.
Now, you said that like if you're in the cellar, everybody had a little taste of beer now and then. Was there a hospitality room at the brewer? So, like at the end of the day, do you go have a?
We didn't have a hospitality room. We did have up in the area where we clean kegs, and we did have a tap there that we could take people over, but it wasn't what you would call a hospitality room.
Yeah.
So in those days, you couldn't sell product on the product
Right.
like that. The thing I don't understand, I don't know how you pay taxes on your beer as you do. Selling it by the glass and what have you there.
No comment. No comment.
Yeah, but we had meters and everything had to be metered at the time. You had the bottling plant. You had a separate tank area, and it had to be separate from the brewery itself.
With the meter.
And with a meter to go to that.
Yeah.
And the same thing with these. You had to have a sticker on the top of this. That one was a state tax thing, and the other was a federal tax thing. And every keg had to go out of there with both the state and federal tax on it, and that's how you paid the taxes on kegs. And that had to be over the top of the bung there, or the tap hole.
How many missions did you fly?
I flew 58 missions. We went also by hours, and I had 288 and a half combat hours. That's basically what I had. I do want to show you one more little thing along that line. This is a little wallet that my dear wife used to carry. And the reason she carried it is because that is me sitting on the wing of my P-51 fighter plane.
Wow.
And the airplane was named,
Betty Jean.
and that was her name.
And were you there till the end
Yes.
of the war?
Yeah.
So, the Bulge, were you in?
Yeah. I was there for the Bulge. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Now, as I said, I only had one brother, and we were both fighter pilots in Europe at the same time. So you can imagine what my mother and dad were going through when every night on the news it was so many bombers went out and so many didn't return and so many fighters went out. But he came to visit me at my base one time, and that's me and my brother at my base, and he was a fighter pilot also at the 9th of the 1st.
Couple of good-looking young guys there, eh? And did you fly then after the war?
No.
No, you gave up flying.
No, we started having children, and children are too costly to.
And so is flying.
I was gonna say flying. Now, other than that, we were both fighter pilots, and I'm going to show you how young you have to be if you want to learn to be a fighter pilot, and that's right there.
Oh my gosh! And they're in their toy plane. Awesome.
But fortunately, we both survived the war and came home from there. So However, it was an experience.
I guess the last thing I'm wondering is with so many breweries kind of opening in across the country, we kind of reached the point where there's the number of breweries have exceeded the number of pre-prohibition. Do you have any advice for new brewers who are opening up, or people who,
Any advice for who now?
for new brewers who are coming in, or people who are trying to make a brewery?
Brewing today, as you can see with this Billy, is entirely different than it was when I was a brewmaster. Entirely different. I would have no conception at all of how to brew in your facilities here.
So, back in the 40s, were you had modern refrigeration plants. You weren't cutting ice at all.
We did have refrigeration plants then, yeah. However, there again, steam came into the problem. We had steam engines that ran the refrigeration plants.
But the plant might have been set up pre-prohibition for ice, for cutting ice, maybe, or no?
I don't know. I really don't know, Larry, just how soon refrigeration came in.
Yeah.
I don't know. However, when I was in the brewing, but when we reopened the brewery in Iona, there was refrigeration there.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, we got light coming across his face now.
Yep, it's good. We're good.
I think, yeah. Again, thank you so much for
Well, it's
coming
been a pleasure to me too.
and sharing your tales with us.
I hope I didn't bore you with some of the
Oh,
stuff here.
This
but,
is awesome. This is fascinating.
As I say, my family didn't go back that far in brewing, like a lot of like the Stroh family that went way back. I am kind of thrilled that they were all very active in their business. Things today people don't understand is that my granddad, who who had his first saloon at 30 years old, then had the Bank Cafe, which was the finest eating place in Akron, Ohio, in the main street right downtown. Only had a high school education at that. My dad and his brothers had a high school education, but they were brilliant businessmen. It's just unbelievable the things that they did. That I don't know whether it's education or not, but what they learned then was how to learn and how to do things. And today, I don't think schools have the ability to do that. I don't know, but it's amazing to me what these guys accomplished with a high school education.
Yeah. Well, you and I are in the same boat. We both have 2 years of college, and that's what we got.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Worked out okay.
It worked out okay. Yeah. Well, anyway, I'm very proud of them. I raised my dear wife and I raised 7 kids, and I'm very proud of those guys. I'll tell you, and that bunch too. So we were very, very fortunate along that line.
It's great.
What was your motto when you were in college at Windsor? What was your motto? Going on with the bridge. What was your motto when you were in Windsor in college? What was your motto?